Hi friends, my name is Trish Roberts and you're watching Faint Signals from Vega. And I thought since our feline friends were asleep and not likely to be sort of walking across cameras and shaking the background there, that I would share some photos, some images. There's no graphic images. I don't believe in showing graphic images at all. I don't think they're necessary and they're traumatic. But I wanted to share some images about a campaign that I was involved in about a year ago. And I thought that you might enjoy them. It's from the Be Fair, Be Vegan campaign. And it was a large digital billboard campaign in Times Square in New York City. And it was created by Joanna Lucas, and I just helped her with, social media, etc. And I thought that you might like to see some of the images that were on this billboard, and they focus on sentience. So that's something that I try to bring to people's attention when I talk about veganism. I talk about sentience, and I don't talk about treatment of animals. Very rarely do I talk about treatment, because all forms of animal exploitation are abusive, and there's no such thing as non-abusive use of animals. So I don't focus on treatment at all. I focus on why we should end our use of animals, and that means going vegan, and going vegan for ethical reasons, which is what veganism is, an ethical position. So I will just start with showing you some of the images, and then after that I was going to show you some images from just an online social media Facebook campaign that I did on my page Live Vegan, which is unfortunately Facebook smothered with algorithms. In about 2012, it had about 58,000 people on it, and then Facebook with their algorithms kind of smothered it, and then suddenly it came to a screeching halt. But while it was going well, I had a nice campaign where I invited people to share their images of them holding up a sign, being vegan. It's easier than you think. And so a lot of people sent in their images, and I just wanted to share that with you because it just shows the diversity of people who have decided to go vegan for ethical reasons. And, and I think that it's sort of a bit inspiring. So I thought I'd show you some of the images that were sent into me. It's sad that Facebook smothered Live Vegan, because there was lots of people joining from Latin America and all around the world, and it was getting about between 50 to 250 people joining a day. But that's unfortunately how social media has gone these days. If you're not paying for advertising, or if you're trying to do some sort of social justice thing, which is what veganism is, then it tends to want to do its best to kind of smother things. But anyway, so I just wanted to show you, first of all, this is from the Be Fair, Be Vegan campaign, and these were images up on a billboard, digital billboard in Times Square. It was a really huge billboard, so everybody could see it. It was hard to miss. It was above Good Morning America's studios, and it lasted for a month. It was by a it was a donor who, a very wealthy donor, who gave gave the donations to Joanna Lucas so that she could do this billboard, and it was very effective, and lots of people saw it, and it was really I think it's really quite beautiful, and it sort of demonstrates sentience. So I'm just going to be silent for a minute or so, and I'll just show you these images, and I hope that you enjoy them. I just wanted to comment on this particular one because I'm not sure if people realize how many rats and mice are used in animal experimentation. Of course, I tend to focus on animals that are used for food. There's 1 trillion land and aquatic animals used for food every year, and so I don't focus on animals used for experimentation and other reasons, not because they're not important, but because if we appreciate that using animals when we don't need to for trivial reasons like palate pleasure, and by the way, a plant-based diet is delicious, but if we care about the animals on our plates, then we're going to care about animals used for other reasons, and it is completely unnecessary. It's unnecessary for us to be using animals at all. And if most of society were vegan, we would actually be finding more alternatives to animal experimentation. And there are alternatives that exist, but unfortunately they're not. Necessity is the mother of invention. And if we were a society that believed that it was wrong to use sentient animals as resources and as property and as things, then we would be very easily finding other ways that didn't involve torturing in dreadful ways, torturing animals for experiments. And a lot of pretty much most of the experiments that are done are absolutely unnecessary, and they're just absolutely horrifically torturous for animals. And they don't even, and they use all kinds of species, but one of the most common ones are mice and rats. And these are very feeling, intelligent little creatures. And they're intelligent, sentient beings, and they suffer tremendously, and they don't even bother counting how many they use. I mean, there's millions and millions and millions used for just ridiculous purposes. So I don't focus on animal experimentation, but because of the reasons I said about animals used for food, but I want us to remember that every single day there are millions of animals being tortured for pretty much completely unnecessary experiments, and that these experiments, we could actually be replacing them if we actually were mostly vegan society. We would not be using sentient beings this way. So that's why I don't focus on. I think that once we realize that animals that are used for food, that it's completely unnecessary, we're going to, this will expand to other areas of animal exploitation. So I'll just show some more. You may not be able to read that properly. But anyway, it's about baby calves that are taken from their mother when they're about a day old. Male calves are removed from their mothers, whether it's large dairy, intensive dairy facilities, or small, small organic farms, as they call them, organic. So that's the nature of the dairy industry, is removing male calves and 1 or 2 days old, so they don't drink their mother's milk. That's why we have milk, because it's stolen from the mother. And those male dairy calves are taken off to slaughterhouses at 1 or 2 days old. They can barely walk. They end up sucking on the fingers of the slaughterhouse workers. They're distressed. Their mother's crying for days. And that's the nature of this industry, the dairy industry. So if we find that appalling, we should find all of it appalling, because that's the nature of animal exploitation. It's abusive. It can't be anything else but abusive. And the same goes for, male chicks. They're removed from, they're sorted through, somebody stands there and throws them into alive into a macerator machine, which just basically sort of slices them up as they're alive. because male chicks are of no use to the egg industry. And anybody who receives, they send they send chicks in packages around the US, and in the blazing heat and the freezing winter. And for every one of those chicks that ends up making it alive to their destination, there's hundreds of chicks that either die, or they're male chicks that are thrown alive into macerators. And of course, the female hens suffer terribly. They're not supposed to be producing these many eggs. It's just not normal, and it's incredibly debilitating. It's also, if they're in a battery hen situation, it's absolutely appalling. But if you've seen the free range facilities for hens, there's dead hens laying on the ground. It's a large ammonia-filled barn, windowless. They might be able to walk around, but it's absolute chaos. They're really, really stressed because they're not supposed to be in such confined areas with other hens. Their beaks are often sliced off with a hot blade, and that their beaks are very sensitive. And it's just an appalling thing, and it's so unnecessary. We don't need eggs and any animal products to survive. We can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and non-animal sources. So, the only reason all these animals have been put through all this torture, and eventually they're all killed. I mean, all these hens that are in these facilities are killed when they're no longer productive for the egg industry, and the same with every other. And that includes, organic cows, organic dairy farms. Those animals, for that business to be profitable, they kill the dairy cows, because if they're no longer productive. So all of them all wind up in the same slaughterhouse. And chickens, of course, they're probably the most abused of all in animal agriculture. So all of this is completely unnecessary. And this is one where it's their first and last day together. This is organic dairy. That's basically it. And the mother cries for days. If you've ever seen a mother separated from her calf, it's absolutely horrific. And I've seen it with my own eyes when I lived rurally in Tasmania, and we lived next door to we're often surrounded by animal agriculture, and they separated next door to us. They were separating the calves from their mothers, and the mothers were bellowing across as the calves were being taken away I don't know if they were being taken to a slaughterhouse, or if some were taken to other farms, but the mothers were all crying, and there was about 20 or 30 of them, and I thought I was going to go insane. I thought I was going to go a bit, for want of a better word, a bit crazy just listening to it. It was just awful. Fortunately, we might have been out when that happened, but that happened, I'd say, fairly regularly. And so it's just it's awful. So this is what chicks should die for your omelette. The spirited one, the quiet one, the proud one. All these animals have individual, if we actually paid attention, of course, we just see them as an en masse, a species. We don't sort of see that all these, they're each individuals. And just like the cats and dogs whom we live with, they all have individual personalities. But of course, we'll never get to see that because, we don't want to. For one thing, we don't like to think about the sentience of the animals that we're using, and but that's the way it is. And as it says here, male chicks are killed the last day they hatch because they don't lay eggs. The day they hatch because they don't lay eggs. So it's a real tragedy. Can you imagine that? I mean, everybody, when you see little chicks on TV or you see them in images, and everybody goos and gars over them and stuff. But this is the reality for chicks. And those little chicks that you might see, for every one of them, there are hundreds that are killed, thrown alive into macerator machines, or suffocated, just thrown into bins. And, dairy products extends, it's more than just milk. There's cheese and yogurt. And there are alternatives, dairy alternatives. If you want dairy alternatives, they exist. Nut milks and organic soy, etc. And there's many vegan cheeses available. And because veganism is really taking off today, and it really is, it's no longer some fringe thing. More and more industries are realizing this, because that's what happens when the more vegans there are on the planet. We also drive demand. Businesses are businesses. They just look for a certain sector and they recognize now that vegans are actually growing in numbers quite exponentially, and so they're starting to provide more alternatives, and that's going to become more and more common. So that's what the market does. So and that's why at the present time there are so many animal products, because most of society is not vegan and they're driving demand for animal products. And so businesses just provide those animal products. But once the scales tip and there's more vegans on the planet, well, there'll be more and more of wonderful plant-based alternatives. But I mean, the variety now today is quite amazing. So I don't see any sort of sacrifice, even in 12 years that I've been vegan. I've seen, if you're interested in pre-made things, which I'm not really, there's heaps of things that I make, heaps of recipes that I make, and I have a fantastic diet. It's delicious, but there's plenty of, pre-made products which are vegan that you can, or even accidentally vegan if you look at the label. So this says male calves are killed as babies because they don't produce milk. And it says the cautious one, the brave one, the trusting one. And that's true. If you had the time to have some sort of personal relationship like the people in sanctuaries have with the animals who are refugees of domestication, you quickly see that they're just like the cats and dogs whom we live with. They all have different personalities. They all have different likes and dislikes. They all relate differently to one another and to the sanctuary workers. And it becomes very clear. And if you've ever seen a calf playing with her mother, I saw an amazing video actually of a calf playing with her mother who was rescued in a sanctuary, and the calf was running back and forth, and just like a little puppy, bending down in her back legs and just being really playful. And it's it's wonderful and that's what, of course, they're non-human animals, they're young animals, and they love life just like we do. And if that little calf had stayed on that farm, she would have been born into slavery on that farm. And she'd be forcibly, if she was a dairy cow, she would have been forcibly impregnated every year and then give birth, and then her child would have been taken from her, and that would have happened repeatedly over a few years until at around 5 years she would have been, and if it was a male calf, and they're all bonded incredibly, their mothers and children, so they bond, and then they forcibly remove the calves from the mother, and it's tragic. And then if they're male calves, they're taken off to be killed. Can you imagine that if you were a mother, having that happen to you? I mean, and they go through dreadful psychological distress. And then their female calves are taken from them, and they're forced again into slavery, and have all this happen again. And their udders are often overly large through sort of breeding, and they often suffer from mastitis. There's a lot of pus that's in milk, in dairy. There's lots of other things too that are in dairy that are problematic. And if you go to nutritionfacts.org and have a look at dairy, it's absolutely, just putting aside for a moment that they're sentient and we shouldn't be stealing their milk or killing their children. But dairy is an absolute nightmare for health, particularly breast cancer. So I urge you to check that out. I'll put a link. I'll put a link to a description of organic dairy and what's wrong with organic dairy. And I will then also put a link to some facts about dairy, the pus, the growth hormones, the neurotoxins. There are pesticides and neurotoxins that they say are contributing to Parkinson's and all sorts of things. The growth hormones are contributing, they say, to breast cancer. And so dairy is a nightmare, and of course the trans fats, which even children now they've discovered when this is sad, but when they do some autopsies of young children that have been killed in accidents, they've actually seen that they have a collection of already have the signs of heart disease in their arteries, and this is from animal products. So that's frightening that we're consuming so many animal products now that even children are demonstrating signs of heart disease in their arteries. So that's something, that's just another. I mean, health is an ancillary benefit of veganism, but I just thought I'd mention that. So this is, and we shouldn't forget about fish, because fish is sentient. There's no doubt fish are sentient. Scientists recognize that, but one shouldn't need to do experiments to find that out, because it's fairly obvious that fish are sentient. And it says, which fish should die for your fillet? The peaceful one, the sensitive one, the curious one. They all have individual likes and dislikes. They relate to one another and to the world. And these are, just more about eggs. And, there's a lot of death and violence in the egg industry. Laying hens are killed as young adults when their egg production declines. And if anybody has ever if anybody's ever visited a sanctuary, if you talk to the sanctuary workers, like Peaceful Prairie Sanctuary in Colorado, that's a good sanctuary to support. They promote veganism clearly, and I think any sanctuary should be promoting veganism, because the reason they are full of refugees of domestication, their residents, they're refugees of domestication because we are not vegan, and we are creating demand for animal products, and these animals are coming from those situations. So any sanctuary should be clearly promoting veganism, the ethical position, not just a diet, but rejecting all forms of animal use. Sadly, they don't. A lot of sanctuaries are frightened to mention veganism because they are worried that their non-vegan donors will not give them donations. But that's sort of very sad. So anyway, but Peaceful Prairie Sanctuary, as far as I understand, does promote veganism clearly. And these are just more of whose baby should die for your dairy. And that's cheese, yogurt, milk, every latte that you have in the morning, a dairy latte, which could be easy, a soy latte or something like that. Every latte, there's a bereaved mother and a killing of a male calf or an enslaved female calf. Every single latte that you have every morning, or every piece of cheese, every tub of yogurt, and so forth. And there are alternatives, and even if there weren't alternatives to some of these things, when you think about the suffering, when you think about the completely unnecessary torture of these sentient beings, really, it's just sort of, even if there is something that you can't get, just think about that and think about the killing. And it just says males' calves are killed as babies because they don't produce milk. So, and wool is another problematic animal product. Animal products are problematic, full stop, but wool is, as all the animals that are used for wool end up in the same slaughterhouses, the horrific slaughterhouses that every other animal ends up in. And there's all sorts of awful practices that go on. But I mean, treatment is not the issue here. It's just that we use them and they're sentient. And, each one of the sheep, we love to disparage sheep as if they have no, as if they're stupid. We like to objectify groups when we want to do something awful to them. And we do that to chickens, to sheep. We say all sorts of awful things about different species because we have to keep doing that in our minds so that we can continue to use them. But sheep actually are, they found are more intelligent than most dogs. And, so this is something to think about. But of course, cognitive characteristics they shouldn't have to be like us for us to give them to respect their right not to be used as property. They shouldn't have to be like us at all. And that goes for, aquatic animals. They don't show emotions on their face like we recognize, but that makes no difference whatsoever. Just the fact that they're sentient should be enough for us to give them what they deserve, which is the right not to be used as things. And it says here, sheep used for wool are killed at 3 or 4 when their fleece quality declines. And it says which sheep should die for your sweater, the daring one, the loving one, the hopeful one. They all have different individual personalities. And there are alternatives to animal products in clothing. And, one doesn't have to wear wool. And of course, there's the animal experiment, the animal testing too, which is horrific, absolutely horrific, and it's completely unnecessary as well. When we think that we can get away with it, when there's no drive to find other means to do things, we just use animals as things. The cosmetic industry, and there's still many who still test on animals. They put rabbits into these restrictive, confining cages where they can't move, and then they pour chemicals into their eyes, and they can't even get away from it. And some are struggling so much because of the pain they break their necks. I mean, so that's why we need to not only stop using animals for food and clothing, but we need to check on what cosmetics we're using because and check, really do some research on it, because some say that they might actually not test on animals, but they have animal products in them. And sometimes they might say they don't test on them, but actually they outsource it and they get another company to test on them. But they say, well, we don't test on them. So you need to sort of do research. So, there are plenty of shampoos that don't have animal products and don't test on, tip chemicals into animals' eyes and onto their skin. And so we should do our best to make sure that we try and find makeup that doesn't contain animal products in it and all that sort of thing. If you wear makeup, I don't, but rarely anyway. So that's something that we should try and do too. We just have to, because animal use is pervasive. Animal use is everywhere. Animal products are in a lot of things like computers and tires and on the roads. They're in the bitumen, etc., and footpaths. Animal products are everywhere, and so it's almost impossible to not in some way be engaging with some animal product, whether it's your computer and glues, and there's lots of animal products in tires and all that. But we can certainly stop using animals for food and clothing and entertainment. and other reasons, wherever we, is humanly possible. And it isn't difficult, and it is a joy to do it. And the longer you're vegan, the more you feel in touch and connected with the world. That's my experience anyway. So animals used in testing are killed after being subjected to agonizing procedures. Could you imagine that, being in a confined cage where you can't even move, and somebody is tipping awful chemicals into your eyes and doing it, and just leaving you there to see if, and you can't get away, and you're so in such pain that you end up breaking your neck? I mean, what have we become that we do this sort of outrageous, with these outrageous, awfully torturous things to non-human animals? And this is seen, all the experiments we do, believe it or not, on animals, they actually have an ethics committee, animal ethics committees, who approve these experiments. And you see, that's the thing. It's like we have a totally different set of values, totally different set of standards for non-human animals that we do for humans. We would never, hopefully, never do any of this to humans. Of course, we have experimented on humans in the past, like disabled people, and we even still unknowingly, use people from other countries, like in poorer countries. A large big pharma has been trying out drugs on people without their consent. This is the thing, you see. Racism and speciesism are closely related, but the sort of things that we do to animals in experiments are just outrageous, and these animal ethics committees are a joke, because it's absolutely unethical, the whole thing, just even without all the torturous things that are done to animals, just the non-consensual confinement of a non-human sentient animal, just the breeding them into existence to be used. The whole thing is wrong. And then we torture them. And I mean, millions and 100 million or something are used every year. All kinds of species, cats and dogs, and all kinds of species are used in experiments. So, we need to go vegan, and then, and then educate others to go vegan, that it's not acceptable to be using sentient beings as things, as property. And then eventually, like I say, necessity is the mother of invention. When big corporations realize that most of society does not approve of using animals as things, they go and find other ways to get results. That's how it goes. Anyway, this is also part of the campaign. This is the different but equal part of the Be Fair, Be Vegan campaign, and it was that's actually just a drawing of what was on the side of the building in Times Square. But that's actually a real image of the large digital billboard in Times Square above Good Morning America. That was last year in September. So that was pretty, I think that's actually just, I don't think that's I'm not sure. That could be a real image. That's from Javits Center. There was also a image, a digital billboard there at Javits Center. And this is a wider view of Times Square. This is a real image. So lots and lots of people saw that in that month, and so hopefully some people went vegan because of it. There it is up there in the middle, and that's at Javits Center. And that's at Times Square. Times Square. Oh, and sorry, that's my next thing. That's my next thing. So anyway, that's. I hope that you found it somewhat interesting. I just, I just think we need to start thinking of animals not as this en masse group that is just that they don't have any sort of sentience. They're just there. we need to start thinking about it and stop pretending that they're not sentient for our, because it's convenient to do so. So I'm just going to quickly, I'll just scroll through some of the images from the live vegan little project I had, where I asked people to send in photos of themselves, and just putting out the message, being vegan is easier than you think. And they sort of said how long they'd been vegan for. And, there's a diverse group of people. It's no longer a fringe thing. And that's why I encourage you to please consider going vegan, because really it's an idea whose time has come, as Victor Hugo said. Not about veganism, but I just think that applies to veganism. It is an idea whose time has come, and at this point it's unstoppable. So we may as well get on board right now. So anyway, I'm going to show you some of the images that people sent in, and you can see, different people. So he was vegan for 1 year and 3 months. He was vegan for 1 year. Now, this was in 2012, so hopefully they're all still vegan. So that was 5 years ago. She's been vegan for 9 years. Well done. Six months. 5 years. 1 year. 3 years, 6 months, 2 weeks. That's such a sweet photo. Wouldn't it be great to be born in a vegan family? And by the way, there's more and more women realize that it's quite fine to be vegan during their pregnancy and have completely healthy children. All you need to do is a little research, and they raise their children vegan from birth, and you just need to do some research. These awful sort of propaganda things that are put up every so often about some mother who fed their child soy milk or something, fed their baby soy milk, one or two of them, and then they make such a fuss as if that's normal. And of course that's not good. But I mean, I'd say that there was more going on there than just I'd say that there was some problems there, maybe with the mother, and sort of not being completely well mentally. I don't know, but anyway, if you do research, and there's actually many women that can share their stories about being vegan in pregnancy, and then their children being vegan from birth. So 2 months, so hopefully she's still vegan. And 4+ months, 1 year and 3 months. 19 years. 4 months. It was very nice of them to send these photos in. Vegan for 15 years. 2 years. And let's remember that veganism is more than a diet. So I'm assuming when people say they've been vegan for 19 years that they haven't been wearing animal products or, using animals for entertainment and so forth, as well as not eating them. Seven months. Two years and 2 months. And none of these people, whoops, I skipped that one. 5 years. Look at that little guy. None of these people look particularly sick, do they? And that's the thing. A plant-based diet is incredible for one's health if it's balanced, and there's no doubt about that. And that's why I invite you to check out nutritionfacts.org, which is a science-backed site about a plant-based diet. And they send out, Dr. Grieger sends out little 2-minute videos every a couple of times a week that have really, really interesting. And he scans, his group of volunteers scan all the journals and, the science journals, the medical journals, and so forth. He says that so you don't have to. And it's very, very, it's really interesting. I still learn stuff about it. That's vegan for 6 months. 2 years. 6 months. 1 year and 2 months. 12 years. Nine years and 6 months. And these are people from all around the place. They're all different countries. I wish I'd been vegan from birth. That would have been great. But I was a late starter, sadly. Oh, and that's the last one. 6.5 months. Okay. So that's really all I. And I'll probably just share. Whoops. I'll probably just share some just a few more of the Be Fair, Be Vegan, and it's different but equal. And I hope that you. I have to different but equal. Let me see. I might have difficulty actually accessing that one. Just hold on a second. Different but equal is very good because, it just sort of, it correlates, that we might be another species, but so what? We're all individuals and we're sentient. And, we are aware. Yep. So I think that might be it now. So so that's really pretty much all I wanted to show you. I just want to show you one more image, really, which is something that wasn't actually during the campaign. It wasn't on the billboards, the large digital billboards in Times Square, but it's something that I just want us to think about. And it is from Be Fair, Be Vegan. And let's see if I can pull that up. There's no graphic images. I don't show graphic images, but this is something that's used in slaughterhouses, and they stab that into the necks of animals that are upside down in shackles, and then they suck all the blood out, well, as much blood as they can out of them. And look at that device. I mean, isn't that just horrific? And this is just so, the whole thing, it's so unnecessary. And it's true, like, I find it funny when people have a problem with me talking about veganism, and I think, well, why would you have a problem with somebody promoting nonviolence and justice? Because that's what veganism is. Why would anybody have a problem with someone promoting nonviolence and justice? And it is undeniable that animal use is violent, obviously, all forms of it and all the different ways that we do it. There are no nice ways to do the wrong thing. There's no such thing as humane exploitation, humane use of animals. And even if there were, it would still be morally unjustifiable. So, if we condemn violence, then we must cease consuming it in the form of animals for food, dairy, eggs, flesh, honey, etc., clothing, wool, leather, fur, silk, etc., entertainment, and other reasons. But look at that. Isn't that just an awful device? And these are the sort of things that we, have, and think of that that man. Think about the workers that have to do that dreadful job, stabbing animals in the neck with that and sucking blood out of them. Just think about that. This is what, when we're not vegan, this is what and oftentimes these people are migrant workers and they can't get any other sort of job. And this is what we're making people do. They're hired assassins, really, because if we're not vegan, that's what we're getting people to do for us. And these slaughterhouses are torture. There is no such thing as a non-abusive slaughterhouse. So just think about that next time you sit down to a dairy latte or a steak or a burger or whatever. Think about that this device is used on every single one of those animals eventually, whether they're, no matter if they're dairy cows or calves, that's what somebody uses on them. And the last thing I want to leave you with, which is something just that I just made up the other day. Just hold on a sec. I just made up a little thing which I sort of, it's very simple. And let me see where I can find it. I lost it now. Sorry, I haven't done this, haven't used this part of the thing before. It's just non-violence plus justice plus joy equals veganism. That's how I see it. It's a joy and it's a privilege to be able to talk about it. And it is the most important, one of the most important social justice issues of this century. And people will realize that more and more as time goes by, because not only is it an ethical issue about, us being more human and not using other fellow earthlings in these dreadful ways, but it's also it is also killing the environment. Animal agriculture is responsible for 51% of greenhouse gases, And I've actually been misquoting Cowspiracy, but apparently it's 1 acre every minute, or 1 to 2 acres every minute of Amazon rainforest are cleared to make way for animal agriculture. It's the greatest destructive force in the Amazon rainforest. 1/3 of arable land is used for animal agriculture on the earth. There's 95,000 miles of dead zones in the oceans from animal agriculture. Waterways are being destroyed. There's a tremendous amount of destruction from animal agriculture. If you watch Cowspiracy, the sustainability secret, it's really, really absolutely mind-boggling. So not only is it destroying our health as well, but it's destroying the environment. And if we also care about climate justice for other human beings, Bangladesh is going underwater, and we're responsible partly because we're not vegan. And that there's 160 million people live in Bangladesh, and India is building a wall around Bangladesh to stop people from coming over when it goes underwater. I mean, these are the sorts of awful things that are happening because we are not vegan. That's we're very responsible for what's going on in these countries that are. Sort of suffer, and all the people that are suffering because of climate change. So, and if we think that, if we ever think, well, I don't know if I can, if we ever sort of think about, if we want somebody inspiring to think about, for what they've done what they've done in their life, think about this particular person. Robert Smalls, who was born into slavery in 1839, steals a Confederate military ship in 1861, disguises himself as the captain, uses a secret code book and hand signals to pass Confederate guard ships, rescues more slaves and their families, escapes to freedom, runs for Congress, and wins. I mean, how amazing is that? I think I just wanted to show you that because, I mean, some people are amazing, aren't they? And if ever you feel like, hang on a sec. If ever you feel like this little guy and you sort of feel like everything's a bit overwhelming, and that you feel like your contribution to social justice is insignificant, just remember that, as Gandhi said, whatever you do may be insignificant, but it's important that you do it. So it's really, really important that we sort of do what we can, even when it looks like things are dire. And finally, one of my favorite people, hold on a sec. One of my favorite people who I think is also very inspiring. Never give up. Remember, love is unconditional, and stick to values and principles. The wonderful Chelsea Manning, who I don't know how she manages to be so positive after what she's been through, and how unappreciated many don't realize how she changed the discourse, even though, of course, we could do a lot more for addressing the dreadful things that we're doing to brown people overseas in the name of resources and hegemony. But anyway, so all forms of discrimination are related. Speciesism equals sexism, equals heterosexism, equals racism, and so forth. They're all faces of the same ignorance. And that's why I promote not only veganism, but anti-war and anti-imperialism, because it's all related. And so if we really believe in justice and nonviolence, a first step to a nonviolent life is to become vegan. And then we must do our best to do what we can to end these dreadful wars overseas for resources and hegemony against, this whole white supremacist move to just take over other countries. And it's just a horrific thing. So So that's really all I had to say today. I realize it's an odd time of the day to be talking about this. I know it's 9, around 10 or something in the East Coast of the United States. It's about 1:15 a.m. here, so in Tasmania. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found it interesting. I hope it wasn't boring or anything. I just wanted to share these images because that I just really, it's important for me to try and get across to people that non-human animals are sentient, and it's something that we just need to sort of stop and think about, that the dogs and cats aren't just these special individuals on the planet, and the rest of the other species don't have these sort of qualities. It's just not like that. That's sort of, it's naive of us to think that they're all animals have sentience, and that's what we need to think about when we sit down to eat animal products, that these were once sentient animals on our plates. And when we wear wool or leather on our shoes, all those shoes that we're wearing were the skin of a non-human animal who was tortured and killed for completely unnecessary reasons. And we don't really have the right to do this. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And I invite you to check out my vegan resource that I made. It's a podcast that you can listen to. Oops, it didn't come through. It's a podcast that you can whoops, I put it in the wrong place. And it focuses on ethics, of course, how to go vegan. And I invite you to check that out. And you can listen to it in your leisure, because you can listen to it walking on the treadmill or going for a walk or wherever, at the bus stop or whatever. And I hope that it helps you go vegan. And if you have any questions at all, please, you can contact me at info@howtogovegan.org. And no question is too silly, as long as it's sincere. I don't mind at all. So info@howtogovegan.org if you want to contact me, or you can leave questions in the comments section. So thank you so much for watching. And next time I'll probably just give a live stream talk about a particular issue in relation to veganism. And I'll see you again, hopefully, next time. So my name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time. Bye for now.